What it is, everybody.
What's up? Hello, folks.
Yeah.
Familiar faces. We got double Randys. Shep, Joni.
2X Randy.
Right.
Shep just gets better looking every time I see him.
Shepard, has anyone told you that you remind them of Dr. Huberman if you grew a big beard out? I thought that the very first time I saw him, possibly because you sent me the link and then I clicked on it. I'm like, huh, kind of looks like Shepard if he had a beard.
He does kind of look like
Have you ever seen me and him in the same room?
Good point. Very good point.
Clark Kent over there.
Yeah. So we've been plugging Dr. Huberman quite a bit, but rightfully so. If you guys want literally to get a master class in physiology, kinesiology, strength, hypertrophy, all of that stuff, the episodes that he's doing a whole guest series with that Dr. Andy Galpin. And I forget, Shep, where's Galpin teach? Do you remember?
Oh, I want to say Stanford, but that's because everybody he has on there is from Stanford.
Yeah, Huberman's at Stanford. He might be, is he like maybe UC Berkeley or something, or I don't know, but wherever he is, but he's a sports physiologist, and they're basically doing, I mean, it's like a master class, but Dr. Galpin's really good at like breaking it down to somewhat of layperson terms. It does get a little nerdy and sciencey, and sometimes my eyes gloss over a little bit, but I mean, it's amazing the amount of information that they're distilling down, and it's all just totally free. It's one of those episodes that I really would love to. The latest episode, I think, is over 4 hours long, but it's one where like I really need to sit down with a pen and paper and take notes. It's that good.
Yeah. Yeah, that one he did with him that was only 2 hours long, that was kind of the broad stroke overview, is phenomenal too.
The one that was several months back?
Yeah. That was like the precursor to this like in-depth one.
Yeah,
I haven't started on this whole series, so.
Yeah, I think they probably got so many great responses that was so informative. It's called the Huberman Lab podcast, Marina. I'm sure they got so much information just saying like, I think I may have said this on the show, but I think it's the most condensed and valuable piece of content I've ever consumed on strength training, hypertrophy training, power, in just such a succinct fashion. I mean, that is like a 2 to 3 hour podcast too, but still, just to get it all down in one episode was really cool. I reached out to Dr. Andy Galpin. He said he's a little bit busy these days, but so I told him I'm going to keep reaching out to him, and he said that was cool. So one of these days, hopefully, we'll be able to get him on because he's a brainiac. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And he's doing like muscle biopsies. He's doing all this different stuff, testing in the lab. I think he said he's done like over 35 muscle biopsies on himself in his own lab to test just muscle tissue and fibers and things like that. I see Randy has a question. Randy, go ahead and unmute yourself if you care to.
I think the second Randy is a friend of mine that I invited to join today. I sent you a little email. I don't know if you got it, but he's going to be 82 on Monday. Nice. His name is Gary Classy. He has put on a golf tournament at Pebble Beach for the last 50 years. And he just came back recently from playing golf over in Scotland.
Wow.
So that's the reason why you have the second Randy there. And I just thought that he might enjoy this.
Awesome. I love it. Welcome, Gary. Welcome to the crew. We got Gary Classy and Jim Class. How about that? This is the classiest Q&A we've ever had.
Oh, he said it.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Gary. Great to have you.
Very cool. Yeah, Randy. So last week we had kind of talked about like what we should name the thing. We didn't really get into it, but Randy said we should name our the way we teach things long and strong, which I think that might be taken by a different industry, would be my guess.
You know what? For a while, I was peppering Adam Long to come on and be my co-host, and that was going to be the name of the segment, Long and Strong.
It's the low-hanging pun fruit.
for
I
some
actually
reason.
have an update to that.
What's that?
I have an update to that.
What do you got?
18 strong and long. Because 18 strong is your brand. And so anyhow, anything you put on with it would be good, I think.
There we go. 18 strong and
Long,
long.
strong and long.
It still sounds a little funny.
It's pretty dirty.
We're still just grade school boys at heart, Randy.
Yeah, farts and dick jokes are still funny for us.
Yeah.
That will never go away.
Yeah. Adam Long said that he had a better job than podcast host. So he decided not to. That's like when I invited him to come to Sweetens Cove and he said, well, I'll definitely be there unless we have a tournament that week. And it turned out they had the Houston Open or something. I said, well, how about we just trade prize money for what I win, you get, what you win, I get. And he didn't go for that either.
Aha, it's yeah,
Weird.
his work schedule sucks.
Yeah. Right.
He's always out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd rather make a couple, $100,000
$100,000.
than go spend 5 with us.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of making money on the PGA Tour, Hayden Buckley had a great day again yesterday. He was sitting T5 at the end of yesterday. Shot a 6-under bogey-free round out at Torrey Pines he played the North Course. Apparently the South Course is the harder of the two. And I think there's some weather coming in today, so we'll see how he fares. But I know he likes a bit of a challenge. When we were at that Victoria National for the finals, it was kind of a little bit of a rainy, kind of muggy day. And he's like, I like this stuff. There's going to be a lot of guys choking out there, is what he said. So
I love his confidence is like it's bordering right on hubris, which I really like.
it's fantastic. It's fantastic. So awesome. What else we got? What else we got going?
Oh, the jury's still out, but this literally just came from the UPS dude, our buddy Martin Chuck. So we've got and again, we're not affiliated with Martin Chuck in any way, shape, or form. We do not get commissions.
Although Martin Chuck is doing the Forge. I know that.
So, but yeah, so the Tour Striker, the pitching budget is supposed to help you hit more down on the ball. So we'll get it in the pit, Bodine, and give our review.
Show them the front of it.
It's
So basically,
bizarre.
it has really like the sweet spot is really small.
Yeah.
And
So that's like putting the TV there. Right.
so I haven't seen one of these in person yet, but basically you can't hit it. I mean,
Right.
it's meant to give you a little bit of the proper
Yeah.
attack angle as you come into the ball.
Yeah, because like the face starts right there,
Yeah.
so you really need to go down on it so you can hit that sweet spot. So I'm interested to see how hard it is to hit this thing.
Yeah. We ordered that after our conversation of the golf hammer last week, because we inquired about that as well. Did you ever hear back from Kendall?
I did. So we've just kind of been going back and forth a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought it was like we're trying to strike the ball with the hammer, but it's more of like a visual aid.
Yeah. So
Like, I mean, you're hitting it, but like I wanted to smash the ball with the.
like I wanted to take that thing to the driving range and hit balls with it, is kind of the thought process I had. And then when I watched the video, it was more of, and Marina, correct me if I'm wrong, he had a golf ball with an alignment rod stuck into the ground. And then he showed how basically you grab it like a club, and then like how you would tap it at that angle to get the right angle of attack into the ball. So I was expecting to see a video of him hitting golf balls with
Right.
this golf hammer. So it wasn't quite what I was thinking. And then Ryan and I said, well, let's order the Tour Striker Club, which has been around for over a decade, 15 years for sure. I bet Martin has sold 1 million of those things. It's
Oh, I bet.
so I've
But
always
it's a
wanted.
good drill. It's a good tool to have for drills. I mean, just to rehearse that movement, just with a hammer.
Yeah. Like kind of and it looks like a mallet, right? It's a golf
that's right.
shaft with a small mallet head.
That's
So
right.
it made total sense. And obviously you have to hold it so it squares up and everything. And he talks about how when you naturally grab it, knowing what your intent is, you're
Mm.
going to grab it the right way, which I
Yeah.
liked that. So
Yeah,
Um,
it certainly worked for me because you just do it sort of subconsciously. You just sort of use it. So yeah,
Mhm.
and I went out to play afterwards, and I actually struck the ball really nicely. The only thing was, I said last week, I just came across it a little bit. So you just got to be really conscious of going outwards and follow through. So, but yeah, it's cool.
which I would imagine you could even just set the ball and, if you're doing it with the alignment rod, does it come with the ball with the alignment rod in it? Marina, does it actually come with?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. No. Did
Because
you?
I'm imagining you could even just set it up with the ball, almost with an in to out, like you're trying to drive it down with a little bit of an
Yeah.
in to out. Or if you're trying
Yeah.
to cut it maybe a little differently. But
Yeah.
no, so we're excited to get those clubs in the pit and just mess around, and then even just go to our local driving range when it opens back up.
Yeah,
Should be quite comical. Actually, we should video that.
we should. We have to put up a net all the way around in the pit because I feel like the balls are going to be going everywhere when we first start hitting this thing.
Have you not been here? We do have a net all the way around.
No, like behind also.
Oh, I'm not sure how you plan on getting it back there.
But
Oh,
you need a trackman there as well. Otherwise, you won't appreciate your attack angle changes.
Marina,
No,
I'll tell you what. If you donate a TrackMan, we will put your name on it,
Pretty
and
fun.
we'll put a plaque on there that says Marina's TrackMan, and we will post it all over the internet.
Oh, really?
We're
Oh,
fine.
yeah.
Yep, we
I'll
will
do
give you.
that next week. Yeah.
We'll give you full credit.
Oh, thanks.
No,
man.
my last client that was in here, I was hitting balls when he walked in. He's like, "Oh, we need to get some numbers on that swing." He's like, "Come over, you should come over and hit." He just put a whole new TrackMan facility in his basement, huge launch monitor and everything. So I might have to take him up on that.
Yeah, what's 30 grand amongst friends? It's fine.
I know. Well, our buddy Jason Phillips, he just sent a picture of his that he just set up in his garage with the force plates and everything. Pretty pretty impressive.
That thing's pretty technological, what he's got going on in there.
Yeah, for sure.
That's pretty slick.
All right. Anything? And what else we got? Anything else? Joni's just sitting out by her pool, chilling out, relaxing. Like
Her the
normal.
huge.
Yeah.
Her
usual.
huge. Yeah, it's been a mobility week all week.
Yep.
Which has been fun to talk about and read about and learn about and everything. And
Yeah, we
everybody's-
had put some of the videos out that we had shot. Couple were within the last 6 months or so. A couple were older ones. But yeah, I mean, as far as the mobility stuff, it's such a huge piece. Obviously, it's what we saw when we put out our poll, that people just want to know more about it, want to know how to do it. And I mean, I think the key to our emails this week was just, there's better ways to do it than we've maybe learned in the past. There's things that we're learning on a regular basis too. I mean, the whole science of the muscles, the body, stretching, fascia. So, the whole discovery of the fascial connections and the connective tissue and really how everything is connected in the body. They're really just learning about I mean, obviously there's people that have been studying fascia for decades now, but it's starting to become much more understood that our fascia, and if you, I would assume everybody kind of has heard that word or knows a little bit about it, but basically think of fascia as like saran wrap in your system. It's almost like a spider web that really intertwines everything in our body. It's around our organs, it's around our muscles, it's within our muscles, it's around our cells. And it's kind of funny because when I was in physical therapy school, we did, all through high school, college, science classes, you do your dissections and things like that. But when I was in physical therapy school, we had our gross anatomy lab. And so we were dissecting, we did a couple different animals, but then we did humans. We did cadavers. And, when you're opening up the tissue, you've gotten, we've all seen this if you've ever cut meat or pulled apart chicken or anything, you know, like the really stubborn stuff that you're trying to pull off and it's really like shiny looking, that's the fascia.
Right.
And it's very tough. We all have tried to pull a piece off and it won't come off and you got to cut it. And so when we were dissecting, we would pretty much just like, you know, make our incisions and then almost just discard the fascia, like just cut it away, throw it out, or just try to separate it, the skin from the muscles and the muscles from each other. And it was almost like, yeah, we just got to get through this stuff so we can look at the important stuff. And now
Right.
they're starting to realize that our fascia is as important, if not maybe more important than, you know, some of the other major systems like the muscles, the skeleton, you know, the organs, because of the fact that it connects everything in our body. So, you know, like as we raise our arm, yes, we have all these individual muscles in our arm, but the fascia from our hands connects to our forearm, connects to our biceps, connects across the chest, connects all the way down. And so like there's these different slings across our body. And so when you move this way, your fascia is really kind of pulling to some degree all over the body, you know, and that's really our fascia is really more what holds our body up. We used to think it was just bones and muscles and tendons, right? And we think of tendons and muscles kind of working independently. And when we hear like, oh, I'm working my bicep every day. Well, what muscles is this exercise working? Well, a lot of them, you know, but we kind of break it down to, oh, that's a chest exercise, that's a shoulder exercise, that's a bicep exercise. But really, because of the fascia and even all the muscular system itself and how that's tied in with the neurological system, there's so many more things that are going on than just one muscle pulling on one bone, right? And so simplistically, when we read textbooks and things like that, that's how it's broken down, but it's really not very accurate as to how our body necessarily works. So starting to learn more about the fascial systems and really the innervations that I think they said that the fascia has more nerve endings. And I might, don't quote me on this, but might be getting this wrong. Our fascial system has more nerve endings and interactions with our nervous system than our muscular system does. So that right there is kind of mind-boggling. And if you look at, you know, when we look at all these biological models, you know, you see, you'll get like just the skeletal system, like a poster of the skeletal system. You'll get a poster of the muscular system, the vascular system. Well, until recently, nobody ever had designed like the fascial system. And if you look at a poster or a drawing or model of what the fascial system looks like, it's basically, it looks like a full body and it's just made out of spider webs. If you take away the muscles, you take away the nerves, you take away the blood vessels, it's really kind of cool looking. And the way that it interacts with the muscles, the tendons is something that Ryan and I, we've been talking about this for a long time about, you know, there's certain things that we've been doing in our programs for a long time that I don't think we really realize it, but are interacting very well with the fascial system. Just, you know, we've always been big on not just doing your pushes and your pulls, like all in the same direction, right? Like everything we try to do at different angles, different velocities, different stresses. And what they're finding is that the more you can build that kind of variety into what kind of training you do, instead of just doing, you know, we'll call it sagittal plane, which is front and back, like very linear training, like presses forward, pulls, you know, so many people, they just stay in this range of motion, squats up and down, lunges forward, deadlifts forward, instead of doing anything side to side, rotational, up, down, you're like chopping, those kind of things. All of these different directions of movement are not only working those muscles, but they're working your fascial lines, these fascial systems, and it builds in a lot more resiliency into your body. We've talked about how when your body undergoes a stress it's not ready to handle, that's when injury occurs, right? And so by doing these things in different directions, putting your body under forces at different angles, you're training your body to be more resilient. So you're building these fascial lines. And the way that that happens is these things called fibroblasts. And fibroblasts, think of them as like, the way I envision it is like little Spider-Men running around. And as you are going into these different movements, you know, stretching with some resistance, these little Spider-Men are shooting spider webs that are going to help facilitate and protect that movement pattern. So I heard somebody recently, Bill Parisi, talking about they did an ultrasound on one of their pitchers. And this guy was a major league pitcher, and you know, he's thrown so many thousands of times that over time he developed what they thought was like a contracture, but it ended up being a huge like buildup of these fibroblasts in the fascia in his, like basically in his pec. And they figured out that that happened because of all of the throwing that he did. And it wasn't a detriment. It was actually protecting his shoulder because he had done so many times. And so by doing that, he was naturally building up this tissue that was really kind of protecting. So instead of just your muscles holding onto your bones and your joints and everything, he built up this fascial protective system. And really that's what they're starting to find when we have muscle tears and things like that, or injuries. A lot of times it's the fascia ripping first. So if your fascia has better integrity, better extensibility, better elasticity, you're going to be more protected. And so that's why, you know, when we do all these different things in our programs, all these, you know, we've got our move days, we've got just anytime we're doing pushes and pushes and pulls, or, you know, lunges, things like that, you know, doing like our lateral bear crawls and those kind of things, we're moving in different directions with intent. You know, it's not just haphazard. We're moving in different directions. We're putting our body into different rotations against force, and that's helping to build up the resiliency of this fascial system. Now, they also say that our fascia can be a detriment to us because, you know, if we're constantly sitting in a rounded posture, which most of us are, it's not just our muscles that we have to work on in order to improve our posture, right? Like, so the fascia tends to bind down. And so if I sit like this all day long, or I'm somebody that's in a car all the time, my fascia is tending to get tighter too. That binds up the muscles. And so it's a combination of all these things. So don't think of them as separate pieces. Think of them as all kind of working together, right? The problem is your fascia takes longer to adapt. So if you're trying to do some stretching or whatnot, that doesn't respond as quickly as just muscle tissue does. So in order to experience some of these changes in, you know, what we traditionally thought was muscle length, I think we're now starting to find is a little bit more of just connective tissue length. So it's a combination of all of it, but the fascia takes a lot longer to change and to lengthen and to express differences in extensibility. So it's one of those things where you have to do it for longer periods of time in order to see the results. So it's not a quick bang for your buck kind of a thing, but the more you do it consistently, like all of you that have been doing our programs, you know, you start to see that you start to move better over time. And I think that we're going to start seeing people talking about this a lot more.
Can I ask you something, Jeff?
No.
Because I've done. I've been doing for 5 years. I've been doing yin yoga a lot, and our teacher is really, really good. And she always talks about fascias. So we would lay in these sort of stretches, like a you know, a twist or a needle or something stretching, and the minimum is like 3 minutes of this stretch to actually loosen up this fascia. Or we would do sort of opening up the chest, and the longer it is, you know, and we need to do it with the breathing. So you breathe into your rib cage, and you can feel that it's opening. So what does it? It loosens the fascia, does it? Or I don't know. I mean, we're talking about strengthening it at the same time in our exercises with 18 Strong, but the yin yoga, what does that do? Sort of, it just releases them, so it's not so, they're not so tense or tight.
Yes. So think of it as like almost like a rubber band, right? Like a tight rubber band. So when you're doing those long stretches, you're helping to improve the integrity or the extensibility of that rubber band. So you're let's say you're really locked down. We're just going to use the rounded shoulder posture as the demonstration here. So we're still we want to be strong in our pushing muscles, right? But we don't necessarily want to be tight. So we want the muscles, the tissue, and again, think of it all as one working unit. As the muscles and the fascia, you can't really separate them from their from what they're doing, from their physiology. So if they're bogged down and they're really tight, what you want to do and what the yoga is doing is it's allowing you to basically let that protective response die down. Naturally, as soon as we stretch something, our muscles want to contract, right? As a protective response. We talked about this in one of the videos that we put out this past week.
Yes.
So as you're lying down and you're opening up and you're breathing, you can literally feel it almost kind of like melting.
Yes,
Is the idea, right? Like you feel it, you let the relaxation happen with the breaths, and you feel that just starting to relax a little bit. And so the fascia, the muscles are all kind of losing that protective response. And so you're starting to lengthen out and stretch a little bit. So you're improving that connective tissue's ability to lengthen. Now, you don't just want to teach it to be long and loose, right? We like the idea of it being now long, but then we want it to be able to withstand some resistance and some force too. And that's why it's then good to also build in somewhere into your program some sort of exercise that's going to create some resistance against that, and that could be something as simple as then doing like some flies on a bench, where now the more you are able to open this up, now you're teaching it to get strong in that position too. So I like the the idea of yoga and doing different long poses is a great way to help improve the connective tissue's ability to lengthen and get us into postures that we desire. Then what we need to do is build up some strength and resistance in those different postures. Now, I don't think that doing a long yoga class before going and playing a round of golf is a very good idea, because if you're just long and loose, think of Gumby, like you've totally stretched everything out, and then you're going to go try and play golf. Well, you don't have that the elasticity or the pop. What you have is like the lengthening and kind of that softer tissue, but you don't have the ability to snap the whip, or think of like a slingshot. You want that thing to be able to snap back. So before a round of golf, it's going to be do some more of those dynamic movements, where before a round of golf, I'm not trying to get as much range of motion as possible. I'm not trying to improve my range of motion. What I'm trying to do is wake up the muscles in the fashion that they are, make sure that they're able to handle my round of golf. I'm not trying to change my body before I go play a round of golf. No. I'm trying to wake it up. I'm trying to get the muscles pliable and loose, but still ready to have that explosive pop to it. Now, go ahead.
If we do it in the morning, we do half an hour of yin yoga, and then we do half or 45 minutes yang yoga. So we do push-ups, or we do sort of core, and we're sort of waking up the body. So we don't go away in the morning having had just yin yoga, but in the evening, it's really cool to do like an hour of yin yoga before you go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's meant to also help your sleep.
So yin is more the relaxing.
The yang. Yeah, yin is the relaxing, and yang is the strengthening and the more sort of energetic yoga.
Yeah, that's a great balance, that you're doing a little bit of both, because what you're doing in that situation and in a very controlled setting is you're getting both pieces, right? You're allowing the body to kind of relax and loosen. And then now you've got this, let's just take it to exaggerated positions, right? Now you've got this huge new amount of range of motion, but the body doesn't quite know what to do with it exactly. So then now you're going and you're doing some strengthening exercises, and now you're training your body like, okay, this is the tension that I can handle in this new range of motion. So for somebody that is really rounded and you do all these stretches, now you're nice and loose. Now you've got all this range of motion. You can get into a really deep push-up, but maybe you've never really been in that position before.
Mm.
So now you start to learn how to create some resistance there. And now the next time you do it, your body will, your brain will remember that a little bit and will allow that protective response to take you maybe a little bit further and a little deeper into your push-up, because it now feels more comfortable and more protected when it's in that new range of motion.
Yeah, just like you
and-
said in the video, the video that you did about the the hamstrings and the
Yes.
ankle. Yeah, that was a cool one. Yeah, I like that.
Exactly. And then you're right. Then doing that before bed is great because it does a couple things. I mean, it's not like you're going to be going into a sports event or a training session after that. You're going to sleep, right? So to be able to do a little bit of mobility work and loosen things up is great. But also you're tapping into our parasympathetic nervous system when you're doing those type of movements, that long breathing, the meditation, any of
Yeah.
those are really kind of like dampening our central nervous system and tapping into that parasympathetic, which is more the relaxed state as opposed to the sympathetic, which is our fight or flight. Fight or flight is, you're all ramped up and ready to go. Well, obviously you don't want that before you go to sleep. You want the opposite. And that's what that yin yoga is going to help do.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a
Jones got
question.
a question. There she is.
Jeff, remember I used to tell you that I had fibromyalgia all the time
Yes.
because my my back would get so tight and sore, and I've been rolling my upper back now with a roller, on the ground, one of those that you told me
Mhm.
to get.
Mhm.
And I think that's really helping me a lot. Is that fascia or is that muscles?
Well, it can be a little bit of both. First of all, Joan does not have fibromyalgia. She was being a little over
I
dramatic.
because I wanted you to massage my shoulders.
Yeah, and I told her it was too expensive
you're
for me
done.
to do that. Yep.
Right.
So, but what happens when you're using some sort of a roller is that pressure can also help to kind of dampen the response of the muscles. So if the muscles are really worked up and tight, trigger points, those kind of things. And I'm by no means an expert on the soft tissue massage stuff, but was just listening to Thomas Myers, who wrote the Anatomy Trains book. And by the way, if you guys want to hear a little bit more about kind of the fascial systems, I did, and these episodes are a little ways back, but 2 episodes that I just went back and listened to both of them one was with Thomas Myers, who's the author of Anatomy Trains. The other is Dr. Stuart McGill, who is probably the most prolific research scientist and treatment doctor of back pain of all time. I think he has more published studies, like over 250 published studies on back pain. And I had both of those guys on the show, and both of them talk a lot about fascia and the elasticity component and how important that is for golfers. But specifically in that episode, Thomas Myers was talking about, or maybe it was another one that I listened to with him on it, was talking about how doing the roller or doing, some sort of a ball or even just sticking a thumb on that tense spot is going to dampen the signal there, and it's going to make it feel better, and it's going to loosen it up for a short period of time, which is awesome. And that's why, manual therapy can be so beneficial. But then to work on movements that kind of counteract that tightening, so if it's those upper traps where it's kind of like that tension, then working on some postural things that, a lot of times that tension all comes from the forward head stuff, rounded shoulders, just the postures that we're in all the time. So then doing some exercises that are working on, getting into some of those better positions, better postures, working on maybe some chin tucks and even like some strengthening of the upper shoulder muscles, the scapular muscles, doing some of those rows and doing that just on a regular basis. So the pressure helps, but the pressure doesn't fix the issue. The issue is typically going to be that something is off a little bit. Something, in the fascia, the muscles, the tendons posturally is just a little bit off and taking up too much stress and strain.
So, yeah, how do you know if you hurt something, like I pull a muscle, if it's just the fascia or if it got all the way to the muscle, or you don't know yet?
You don't. I mean, it's because I mean, literally, if you're tearing muscle, you're tearing fascia. I
Right.
mean, think of, I mean, literally, fascia is like, it's around every single muscle fiber in the body. So, and when you think of a muscle, I just heard this analogy. I think this was Dr. Galpin, but he said, we all think of like a bicep muscle as like one thing, right? A
Right.
bicep muscle is really a bunch of strands of fibers. He said it's more like, think of a ponytail. We think of a ponytail as one thing, but really it's like a million pieces of hair that are all lumped together. That's more of like what a muscle is. And each one of those hairs is like a muscle fiber. And so that's what, it's the core. That's why the body's so amazing, because a muscle, think of it like just a ponytail on your arm. Every single one of those pieces of hair end up contracting to tighten up. And that's what creates, that ball of muscle. It's all of those units working together in synchronicity in order to create the tension that you use to do a bicep curl or a pull up or anything. Now extend that across our entire body, and all of those muscle fibers working together for you to swing a golf club around your body and not fall over. It's amazing.
It's like it reminds me of like a suspension bridge where it's just a bunch of real tight cables that turn into one, and then so then each one of those cables would have like a coating, which would be the fascia.
Right. So
That makes
if you look up the word, when you have a chance, look up the word tensegrity. So tension and integrity put together, tensegrity. And look up a tensegrity model, or you could just watch the Thomas Myers tensegrity video on YouTube. And he's got basically, he explains how we used to think of our bodies as being built like buildings, right? Like you just stack one brick on top of the other. It's held together by mortar joints. The bricks are the bones, the mortar is the muscles, right? He said that really when you look at, because of this fascial system, it's much more like a suspension bridge that's held up by all these different guy wires. And so if you look up a tensegrity model, it's basically, it looks like almost a spider web that has like these dowel rods and tension points or rubber bands. The rods are never touching each other. They're all held, the way that the rubber bands are positioned is what's holding this thing out. And you can collapse it and open it up, but it's all because of the way that the tension is held on these different dowel rods that the thing looks like a ball. If you pull on one of the rubber bands or snip one, the whole system kind of gets wonky. And that's kind of the analogy that they give when they're talking about fascia. Think of our bodies almost like just a free floating bones in all of this spider web. And when part of it gets bogged down or scarred down, that's going to affect other parts of our body. And so that's where, doing some of these exercises, working on postural things to get all those different guy wires like a bridge, to get them all positioned properly to make sure that we're not undertaking different stresses on the body that we're not supposed to. It's very much what they talk about, what Pete Egoscue talks about, and Brian Bradley in that book, Pain Free, that we've talked about a lot, is why posture is so important, because it's using your body the way that it was designed to reduce the amount of stress on your joints, tendons, muscle, fascia, so you can work most efficiently. And I just saw this in action out in the gym here in the pit. One of my clients was taking a lesson with my buddy Casey here. And Casey is, I think I've told you guys, he's a biomechanics specialist. And he's very different to watch from most golf pros, because when you watch Casey teach, he'll put on this 3D motion sensor called a K-Vest, and he'll put it on their shoulders, he'll put it on their hips, and even a little monitor on their hands. And then you can put it up on the screen, and it will show, what position their torso is in, what position their pelvis is in, and even what position their arms in. And so it looks at sequence, it looks at postures, it looks at angles. And it's pretty cool because Casey's whole thing is all we need to do is get you in the most efficient position and let your body take care of the rest. And so he was working with my client, Rich, and Rich tends to get out of posture. He tends to get really rounded and really arches low back. And without any other instructions, they just worked on getting him in his setup a little bit differently. And Rich is a very good golfer. So he didn't need any, there's other things going on in his swing, but Casey's like, just do this. Just let's tuck the pelvis a little bit. Let's just get you in a little better posture. And let's just work on you feeling that. Let's get your abs a little bit more involved so you can feel what's allowing you to get in that posture. And then he started hitting balls and his ball speed went up like 10 miles an hour. It was pretty awesome. And that's the more I learn, the more I understand how all this is working, how it's all connected. That's what allows a guy like Max Homa to swing so fast and look like he's not swinging fast. They were just showing today that Max Homa, his driver speed is faster than John Rahm's. Now you look at John Rahm's swing and it looks like he's like just swinging as hard as possible. It's so fast. And you look at Max Homa and it looks like he's just nonchalantly swinging, very much like Ryan's brother, Timmy, if you ever see Timmy play.
Oh, it's just infuriating.
It's just buttery smooth. And it's like, gosh, that went so much further than it should have. But it's because it's the efficiency of their swing. They're not having to try to force anything. Their muscle tissue is nice and elastic, and it's able to stretch and contract the way that it needs to. And just being in the right positions allows the force to happen. And that's what we saw with Rich. And Casey said, all we had to do was just kind of get him in a little better position so the body's able to move the way that it wants to move better. We all have our natural inclination, so I don't want to change a bunch of his swing. I want him to swing like he feels pretty natural, but we just had to adjust a couple of things to get him in a little bit better position and understand a little bit more of what his body needs to be doing from just a setup position, really. He didn't touch his backswing, didn't touch what he's doing at the ball, didn't change his grip, none of that. Just had him hinge a little better, get his abdominal muscles a little bit more working, and take a little bit of the curve out of his low back. And it was like, holy crap. He was hitting his 5-iron 210 yards.
What?
Yeah.
I've golfed with Rich. I've never seen him do that.
Oh, Rich can hit a ball. Yeah.
Not a 5-iron that far that I've seen so far.
His 5-iron is his 200 club.
Oh my God. That's
And this was the TrackMan. So this was legit numbers.
All right.
Have you been on this biomechanics then? You should go and do it. Because with both Ryan and your bodies, you should be the perfect golfer because you're also strong, you're mobile, everything. You should be absolutely perfect.
Well, I did do it last year, and Casey and I were still trying to find some time to get me on the system again, so I can start working on a few things. But no, I had a similar experience. I don't hit the ball as far as Rich does, but the same thing last year. Casey put me on it, had me do some swings, and just noticed a few things posturally. Now what we worked on for me was a little bit more of where I am at the top of my swing and what my body, but again, not my hand position or anything. It was more what was my pelvis doing, where were my shoulders? And then I worked on just that position. And then same thing, my ball speed and even my swing path changed quite a bit just from working on those couple pieces.
Because I'm really, really tempted. I'm going back up to Scotland at the end of April. We have another workshop with Gary Nicol and Carl Morris. We're 12 delegates. And at the Performance Centre at Archerfield, next door to Gary's enormous studio with like 4 different screens of TrackMan and what have you, there is the biomechanics chap. And I tried to get a session with him last time, but he wasn't available. So I just wonder whether I should try to do it, because that would be quite cool to see what I should be working on.
What I would do is talk to Gary first, just to make sure, what you don't want to do is get too much information, right?
No.
And especially working with Gary and Carl, who are very non-technical when it comes to their instruction. They're very external focused, right?
Yes.
So I would talk to them first because different instructors have different ways of doing it. And I'm a bigger believer in following one person that you really resonate with, as
Yeah.
opposed to trying to gather all the information, right?
Yes.
Because I think we can get caught in that world of I have too much now and I don't know which way to go. And now you've got this pro telling me this and this pro telling me this, and they're very opposite in what they're teaching. Now, obviously, if Gary and this biomechanics gentleman work next door to each other, I'm sure
Yeah.
they work with the same clients. And so they've
Yeah.
probably worked out a pretty good system. But I would just check with him first to make sure that
Yeah.
he feels like that's the right way to go.
Yeah, he would sit in with me. I mean, if I did that, he would come with me and do it, so he would see.
And that's
But
about as
yeah.
good as it gets, right? Like
Yeah.
to have those two right there. That's what's so neat about having Casey here and us sharing a few clients is now I know, like with Rich, I know exactly what, we'll continue to do our training programs the way that we always would. But now we have a couple extra little minute focuses on, when he's doing deadlift and when he's doing a couple hinging exercises, I have to be a little more particular on cueing him to make sure that, because you can get in a position and it can look right, but what he's feeling and what he's, putting intention on when he's doing the exercise can be totally different than what he was working on with Casey. So now when he's doing like a deadlift, we need to make sure, like, okay, are you hinging the right way, or does it just look that way? Are you engaging your abdominals when you're getting into this position, or are you just kind of loosely going through the motion? Because you can fake an exercise, you can make it look right and it not be cueing the same stuff that you're wanting to cue.
Yeah, so you need to be with the deadlifts, you need to be really careful with the abdominal muscle, so you keep your back really dead straight as you hinge from your hips.
Basically, what you want to do is think of your neutral standing posture. And as you go into your deadlift, as you go into your golf swing, your golf stance, you pretty much want to keep your spine about the same. So you don't want to you don't want to like overarch. Stand up here. So if I'm going into my deadlift, I don't want to like really overarch my back and stick my butt out, right? I want to pretty much, I know this is hard to see with this black sweatshirt, I want to stay pretty neutral and just be able to hinge, not stick my chest out and arch backwards. Kind of that fake posture. And that's something that Rich had always just kind of had in his grain, that good posture was, like sticking your chest up like that. And that's not good posture. Good posture is just, your spine being in a neutral position, your abdominal muscle, your abdominal wall staying fairly flat, having a little bit of an arch in the back, just a natural curve of the back, but then trying to protect that and maintain that as you get into your hinged posture. And so what he was doing, he would actually kind of like almost arch up here, and then he'd kind of kick his butt out, like stick his tailbone out. So he had kind of that S curve. And so to him, it felt like he was hinging and getting over the ball properly. And then when you tell him to straighten up his posture, then he'd go like this and he'd overarch his back even more. And then when he swung, he was wondering why he was getting back pain, because he was totally overarched when he would go to the top of his swing, or when he would either finish and do the same thing, or he just wouldn't finish the swing. And so his balance would be kind of off. So it's, just as simple as better. Like we always say, like, just don't try to think of getting too crazy with the postures. It's just like, what is my standing posture? Okay, now how do I keep that and just hinge from the hips? Just create that little bit of a hinge. And then that's going to allow you to get into your posture. That's going to help you figure out where your true balance is in your feet too. Because as you hinge, your weight's going to kind of shift a little bit in your feet a little bit. So, you're not going to be on your toes. You're not going to be totally on your heels. You should be in a nice balanced position.
Nice. So is there a way, back to the fascia, that we can take advantage of that? Like, how do we train that? I mean, I'm kind of curious, like, why this, like even like back in your gross anatomy days where you just like, I get this out of the way so we can get to the fun stuff. It seems weird that it's been so overlooked for so long.
I know it really is strange. And you wonder why we don't look at it like everything that's in our body is there for a reason, right? Like there's nothing that's just like waste material. Like so
Appendix.
everything has a purpose. And I think we just kind of assumed that the purpose was just to, kind of keep the tension, to keep things together, but
the
didn't
glue.
realize that there was just like, we've learned in the last several years how important the gut biome is, and all the bacteria that's in there, and how many innervations we have from the gut to the brain. So a lot of it has come with all this new imaging technique, or all these new imaging techniques. So it's a lot of technology based, where they've realized like, oh, that's just not like spider webby scarring material. That actually has connections to our nervous system. And they've been able to figure that out just through all these different ways of looking at, tissues under microscopes and doing these electron current kind of studies and things like that. So I think that part of it is just we didn't know better. We just we didn't have the tools to be able to see that there was anything more than what we thought it was.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever smoked ribs or anything, like you pay extra to have them pull that membrane off and then you can smoke them. Otherwise they're like way too tough. And
Yeah,
it's that, 'cause it's like
that's
that's
it.
keeping all together. I've just always called get that membrane off there.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at a cadaver, or even when you look at a poster of all the muscles and you look at the lower back, it's called the lumbar fascia, or think of your you've heard of the TFL, or the IT band. Your IT
Yep.
band is a big tendon, which really is just a bunch of fascia that has come together. So, the whole lateral side of your leg is all fibrous tissue, and it's by design. I mean, it's supposed to be like that, right? So it's kind of amazing how different areas of the body develop this fascia in order to protect. So our lumbar spine, if you look at that, that's like the fascia on the ribs. I mean, it's all this huge, thick membrane, and it's exactly the same as, you having to pull that stuff off. But to your question of, how can we utilize this? How can we kind of train it a little bit? That's what they're learning a little more about. That when you do exercises that are specifically putting resistance through it in different movement patterns, you're able to build up some of those fibroblasts, come in, and they start to basically kind of shoot those little spider webs. And I haven't seen it, but in one of the presentations I was watching, he said that they have video of these fibroblasts, which are cells, and it almost like shoots out a little web and to place this stuff down. So when you're, and that's really what kind of like scarring is too, is, fibroblasts basically like scarring over that tissue. But when scarring is more of a haphazard placement of it, what we want is we want it to run like this way, or I think it actually runs kind of like cross-woven, but scarring, it's like all over the place, like
Right.
spider webs everywhere. And and again, I'm no expert on this, but they were saying that like, even when you sit, like me sitting right now, I have my knees and my hips flexed. So there's fibroblasts that are, spitting out this web in my hip flexors. But if I get up and I stretch those out, I'm gonna bust those fibers. But if you casted me like this for 2 weeks, those webs are going to solidify a little more fibroblasts are going to come in and put more down. And now all of a sudden I'm going to start to build what we call contractures in this position. And then it's going to be a lot harder for me to break out of this position when I get out of that cast. And I have to spend a lot more time stretching that out, doing different things that are going to both increase the extensibility, but then also increase the ability and strength for me to go through that range of motion.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Where if you're not moving, you feel like tight.
Yeah. Like, so I think one of the examples was, on a car ride. And
Yeah.
a car ride, you get out you're stiff. Now, some of that's going to be kind of joint related, but some of it's also going to be, this tightness of muscles and fascia and tissue. And you get out of the car, you stretch out, you do a couple of different movements, and you've busted up some of those spider webs. Think of a spider web that you can just kind of knock down, and okay, you built it up, and then it's absorbed into your system again. But if you're there for too long, you start to build up all this tightness and scarring down.
It's a constant battle having these
That's right.
bodies. Good
And
Lord.
do you think that the EFDs help to break up some of these different fibroblasts and webs that are being shot all over the place? Absolutely.
What a loaded question. Of
Right?
course. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. I wonder if there will be is this going to be the next iteration of like fitness?
I think so.
Have like fascia
think-
fitness experts.
I think I know for a fact that in the like speed world, I think this is going to be the biggest thing that people are talking about in golf in the near future, because watching some of the guys like Stuart McGill and Thomas Myers and this Bill Parisi, who I just read his book on fascia training. Bill Parisi is one of the founding fathers of all these different speed schools that are around the nation. So, any athletes that are working on like track, and he was a javelin thrower, so like all of the speed related athletes, they're always trying to figure out like how do we get faster? Where does that speed come from? And they're starting to realize that yes, there's a muscle component to it, but a lot of speed, especially those like quick motions, like jumping, dunking a basketball. You look at basketball players, a lot of that explosiveness is really stored in the tendons and in the fascia more so than the muscles. So the muscles create the contraction, but the tendons and the fascia are really what store up that energy and create that spring, so they were saying that they did studies on a kangaroo, and a kangaroo, basically when they jump, they're using more of their tendons and fascia than they are the muscles. The muscles create the quick contraction, but it's the tendons and the fascia that allow it to spring. And the fascia doesn't burn any energy. So unlike, our muscles, which require a lot of energy. So they said that a kangaroo walking across a field versus a kangaroo jumping across a field, it uses way more energy walking than it does bounding like that, which I just thought was kind of fascinating. So if we can figure out better ways for us to utilize and store energy and really become a little more elastic in our movements, and what happens to all of us as we get older, right? We start to maybe lose a little muscle mass, but we also start to lose a little bit of that elasticity of the muscles. And so the more that we can bring some of that elasticity training into the way that we train, and like we've been doing, right? Like all these different motions, going in these different angles, trying different resistances, that's going to help to make you almost kind of reclaim some of that elasticity a little bit more than just doing pure straight, strength training, but incorporating some of these faster movements, different angles, different velocities, different movement patterns. That's going to help build up some of that for us.
Nice. Luckily, we've been doing that for unbeknownst to us. I guess not unbeknownst, but yeah.
I mean, there's definitely some things that, I've been playing around with in the gym a little bit. And that's where like a lot of the med ball throwing and things like that, they're great because, with the lighter weights, because you can move them in any direction, right? So that's why, doing the windmill slams and the straight slams and doing some little jumps and stuff, no matter what age you are, finding a level of those kind of exercises that are appropriate. Like I had a 74-year-old client in here yesterday, and I had him holding on to like some rings in the squat rack and just had him doing like little jumps. So he was totally almost unweighted. He was using his hands to kind of hold on and just kind of bounding, just up and down little jumps, like 15 quick ones, just to get that elasticity of the Achilles and the calves and everything, get the legs kind of feeling a little bit of that bounce. because that's the kind of stuff that we tend to not do anymore, but we're starting to see how important it is to keep that kind of moving and keep our muscles and tendons and fascia able to handle that kind of stuff. And that's what then is going to allow us to be able to store and explode when we're in our golf swing. Or, I mean, shoot, if you're playing pickleball or you got to run across the street, like there's so many different situations that we hear people tearing a muscle, tearing a tendon, whatever. And it's because their tissue isn't elastic and extensible because it's never been trained that way. So I have one guy, he was in here and he's been playing a lot of pickleball. And he said, I've heard that pickleball is a sport where, a lot of people have torn their Achilles because they go to cut and pivot. This happened to our cousin Eric playing lacrosse, coaching lacrosse.
Yeah.
And he said, but then I was comforted because he plays with his buddy who's a retired orthopedic surgeon. And his buddy said, well, I think we're okay because really it takes X amount of force to tear your Achilles. And that means you have to move fast enough to generate that force. And he's like, we're so old. Well, I don't think any of us are going to be able to generate that kind of force in our Achilles. So we should be good. I said, well, Rich, why don't we work on it just in case and make sure that you're not the guinea pig that ends up doing it. So.
Nice.
Well, as a follow-up, my surgeon told me, post-op that in my recovery, because he removed a lot of fascia, that you got to go slow and steady for 6 weeks, but don't do a lot of stretching. Don't do it. Let your body heal and then slowly build over the next 12 months.
Yep.
That way
Absolutely.
I don't go back. So
yeah, you also, good point, Jim. You don't want to overstretch it. You don't want to put too much tension on it because naturally our body tends to fight it too. But you don't want to overdo it where you then lose the elastic property of it too. And especially you with having an incision and things like that, obviously you don't want to stretch on that. Awesome.
Very good. All
All
right.
right, guys.
3:00. Watch Hayden this weekend.
Yeah, but let's get a win.
I'm authorized to drive now, but I can't vacuum for another 6 months.
So you say.
Yeah.
6 months keeps getting reset.
Yeah,
Next,
that's right.
That's
next
funny.
month, another 6 months.
Another 6.
I love it. All right, guys. Good
Take care.
stuff. Good stuff.
Have a
We'll
good
talk
time.
to you guys soon.
See you guys.
Take care.